welcome. In today's module, we are going to discuss about the key questions related to the central professional responsibilities of the engineers. In the previous module, we have discussed about the ethical responsibilities of the engineers, and there in that discussion, time and again we have mentioned about the professional ethics of the engineers, professional values of the engineers, and they should be respecting their professional values and they should move by their professional values if they are facing any conflict of interest or conflict of loyalty towards like whom they are more loyal, should be more loyal to the organization if it is doing something unethical, and the loyalty to the stakeholders at large. And we have talked about like the professional values or the guiding principles which helps the engineers to like find out a path of their action and to find out an answer for their whom they should be more loyal to. Based on that discussion, in today's module now we are going to discuss about the key questions pertaining to central professional responsibilities of engineers. So, let us see what are the key questions that we are going to discuss in this module. So, in this module the key questions that will be answered are: what characteristics or behavior on the part of the professionals on whose work your own welfare depends would qualify them to be trustworthy? What is the relationship between an engineer's professional responsibilities and the duties delineated in the job description for that engineer's professions? What is trust? What is the relationship between being a responsible professional and being a trustworthy professional? Is there a consensus on the responsibility of safety amongst engineers? Then we will discuss also about why are bugs and glitches more commonly the focus of attention for software and computer professionals rather than safety problems per se. What beyond having the knowledge of a likely safety hazard does an engineer need to get the hazard reduced or eliminated? So, these are some of the key questions that we are going to discuss now, starting with key question 1, that is, what are the characteristics or behavior on the part of the professionals on whose work your own welfare depends would qualify them as trustworthy? So, what needs to be present in the behavior of the engineers so that we can tell like they are reliable, they are trustworthy? Those characteristics we are going to discuss now. So, like when in today's world we understand the world is so much specialized about specialized knowledge, we have to depend on the engineers for their expertise, for their knowledge that they are having, and it is for our professionals we have to depend on the professionals for their safety, health and well-being of us, because they are more expert, more knowledgeable than us as per the safety issues, health issues are concerned. What we expect from the engineers is when they have the knowledge, they should be using that knowledge and skills and exercise them in taking professional judgments, like if they are in a situation of dilemma and if they are going to give their opinion about certain things, they need to like examine the different alternatives present for a particular answer, and they need to choose one alternative, it is expected that they will use their knowledge and skills for taking these decisions, so that they can assure us that they are going to deliver us the best outcome. So, two things that qualify them to be trustworthy are exercising moral judgment and taking moral responsibility and professional responsibility of the outcomes, because they are more knowledgeable, because they have the subject knowledge, because they have the competency, and they are the best person to decide amongst the alternatives present. So, owning up the decision, so that is important. Exercising the moral judgment and taking moral responsibility and professional responsibility of the outcomes are two qualifiers which are there for considering the persons as to be trustworthy. So, you not only exercise moral judgment, but you also own up, you take responsibility for your decisions. So, when you talk of exercising professional judgment, so it talks it taking care of range of factors. So, going through referring to relevant parts of the knowledge body of knowledge, which is very specific to one's profession, and then taking a course of action which is based in that situation. And so, and taking moral responsibility. So, because you have taken a decision based on all the analyzing all the different options possible, and you have taken a best judgment with respect to it, you have gone through all the competing factors. So, you must have checked, it is expected that you have checked for it, and then you own up the responsibility for the outcomes, and you give an assurance to the people, like we have gone through all the options and this is the best outcome that we have delivered to you. So, we will go through a small case to understand this. So, an exemplary professional response, landing of a disabled plane. A handy example of someone who succeeded in taking account of a wide range of relevant factors in the situation and provided an exceptionally good outcome is the pilot. Chesley Sullenberger, who landed his disabled Airbus A320 airplane in the Hudson River with no loss of life. The basic facts of the case are that within 90 seconds after takeoff on January 15, 2009, US Air Flight 1549 collided with a flock of birds. That collision disabled both of the plane's engines. Captain Sullenberger then took over the flight controls from the co-pilot who had been at the helm, and who then turned his attention to the complex task of trying to restart the engines. Sullenberger's judgment under pressure has been consistently praised. Some commentators have pointed out the extensive training that pilots receive. The unique features of the situation, including the location of the plane, could not have been joint features of any of the pilot's training situations. However, Sullenberger's experience is commonly mentioned. His familiarity in making a host of previous flight decisions would have been an asset to him in noticing and promptly taking account of the relevant features of his situation. Not only did he need to decide whether there was a time to return to the airport from which he had taken off, or reach another, or to risk ditching the plane in the river, but also how to go about landing in the river in a way that made it possible to evacuate the plane. To accomplish this, he had to maneuver the plane so that it would float for at least few minutes. He also chose a location in the river close to an active ferry terminal where boats could quickly reach the plane and remove its passengers and crews before the plane's wings sank. Sullenberger demonstrated many virtues, including courage, steadfastness, and what was following Aristotle is called practical wisdom in this emergency. Unlike a test pilot, Sullenberger did not have an ejection seat, so he could not have ejected himself from the aircraft to save only himself. Therefore, acting in the interest of others coincided his interests in handling the crash. He exited the plane last, however. So, this what we see is a classic case of professional response, where we talk of taking care of the lives of others, being like owning up the responsibility, taking judgments, finding out alternative courses of action, like which is a better course of action, like if we like airport is near or not, how to land a plane near the where the ferry services are available. These needs to be taken care of, owning up for the action, and that's where you find he exited the plane less at the last. So, and after others have been deplaned properly. So, it develops the development of judgment, to which like ethics of professions in engineering is like relates to. Captain Sullenberger exercised professional judgment that brought together his theoretical and practical knowledge as a pilot to bear on the unique circumstances that faced him. His first professional responsibility was to save the people who were on board, to think of their safety. His goal was to save their lives, a goal that he achieved, and to achieve that goal he brought all his theoretical and professional practical judgments into consideration, and then he took an action based on that. He owned a responsibility for his actions too. Next, we will move on to the key question 2, which is also very important, like what is the relationship between an engineer's professional responsibilities and the duties delineated in the job description for that engineer's position. So, the job description based on maybe the role description, the hierarchy, the organization that you are in may restrict you from doing certain acts, taking certain decisions, and but your professional responsibility may also tell what are your degrees of responsibilities. So, sometimes these two may coincide with each other. Sometimes there could be a point of conflict between these two things. If it is so, then how then you handle this situation? So, when you are talking of moral judgments, moral responsibility, it is using your moral judgment and to care to achieve or maintain a desirable state of affairs with regard to whatever is in the person's care. Professional responsibility is a form of moral responsibility which arises due to the special knowledge the person possesses about a particular domain. With talking of like professions, then accountants are responsible for the accuracy of financial reports, physicians are responsible for the health outcome and certain aspects of the public health, engineers are responsible for safety and performance in their design, manufacture and operation of technology. So, these are professional responsibilities. By virtue of profession, you get these responsibilities. And by the mastery of a body of advanced knowledge, so which directly has an implication on the welfare of others, and that it is that which distinguishes a profession from other occupations. So, some moral demands on professionals are adequately expressible in terms of codes of conduct, rules of conduct that specify what acts are permissible, obligatory or prohibited, so that they can act responsibly. A good consulting engineer not only shuns bribery, checks plans before signing off on them and the like, but also must exercise judgments and discretion to provide a design or product that is safe and of high quality. Moral agents in general and professionals in particular must decide what to do best to achieve good outcomes for those who are entrusted in their care. The difference between their moral responsibility and official responsibility is that official responsibility is clearly stated to someone by communicating what they are supposed to do in their job. The job description in the office specifies official responsibilities. So, what happens in many cases, this may coincide, but in what happens, moral responsibility is a bigger frame and it does not reduce to official responsibility. Why? Some official responsibility may be even immoral, like you are asked to do something. I was just doing my job, I was doing what I was told to do. So, these are certain excuses that you find when you are doing an official responsibility and not doing it. But in case of professional responsibility, you do not have any place for these excuses. You have to follow it. You cannot violate any of your professional responsibilities and ethics. Sometimes these may come into conflict. Your official responsibility may put a question mark on your professional, you may be put a point of dilemma, like my official responsibilities tell me to do this, follow this path, but the professional responsibility, I understand this is not the correct path, what do I do? Let us understand it with a small case over here. So, the responsibility for safety and the obligation to preserve client confidentiality. Tenants of an apartment building, annoyed by many building defects, sue the owners to force them to repair their defects. The owner's attorney hires Lily, a structural engineer, to inspect the building and testify for the owner. Lyle discovers serious structural problems in the building that are immediate threat to the tenant's safety. These problems were not mentioned in the tenant suit. Lyle reports this information to the attorney, who tells Lyle to keep this information confidential because it could affect the lawsuit. Lyle complies with the attorney's decision. So, this is adapted from NSP Board of Ethical Review, case 90, subsection 5. So, question is, what if anything might Lyle do other than keep this information confidential? Which, if any of those actions, would have better fulfilled Lyle's responsibilities as engineer? What other information may be needed to make this decision? What we find over here, like he discovered certain things which were not mentioned in the lawsuit and which the attorney told to keep secret, and the structural engineer kept it secret, confidential, based on like the maybe being loyal to the organization who has hired the engineer. But if you are talking of the professional responsibility, it is much above the official responsibility, and in that case, if the structural engineer have truly discovered like there are certain structural issues which may endanger the safety of the tenants, it is a part of the professional responsibility to first tell the organization about it, to repair it and to take care of it, so that they are not, the tenants at large are not harmed. But if we see that the organization is reluctant about it, is telling me to keep this information confidential, not to share it, then it is a part of my professional responsibility also to make it known to the engineers, because professional responsibility is much and much above the official responsibility, because my profession of a structural engineer demands me to find out like whether the structure is safe for the life and security of the people. Now, if something happens, like I do not disclose it, and if something happens, how do I feel as a structural engineer? Will I be able to face myself in this situation, or what is my conscience going to tell about it? So, this is where your virtue speaks, and this is where your professional ethics guides you towards taking a proper course of action. First, definitely report to your organization which is like hired you for it, but beyond your self interest for getting hired or getting a part of commission for it, it is your responsibility to the safety of the tenants which should be of primary importance, and we should really focus on it. Next quick question that we are going to discuss are what is trust and what is the relationship between being a responsible professional and being a trustworthy professional. So, what we found is that trustworthiness is important, and for trustworthiness it is a matter of both ethics and competence. So, do you have a sound knowledge base? Are you competent for your decisions? And because the welfare of the people depends on you, like whether you are taking a decision, whether you are capable of taking a decision based on your competence, are questions which talks of the trustworthiness. So, trustworthiness practices requires attention towards others' well-being, and do you have the knowledge and wisdom to promote or safeguard that well-being. So, and whether you are competent for it, it is not only you are ethical, but whether you are competent for it. So, for a trustworthy structural engineer, like the project that we discussed, before giving green light for any project, it is a part of their responsibility to find out if there is any concern for public safety, public convenience and environmental protection that would be disturbed because of the project. Is there any proficiency in structural design or not? Understanding of their building materials and their quality, like an understanding of the traffic demands, that is the strength of material required, and understanding of the environmental implication of the work, and estimate of the likelihood and severity of the earthquakes, hurricanes and other natural threats, so which may disturb the building or the structure. So, these needs to be taken care of. Then also the engineer might also need to consider other factors like the other technologies that may influence the use of bridge, like vehicles that may be going or ships, or so we are just discussing the example of bridge over here. This can be applied to the building case that we discussed also. So, any intentional, what could be any intent, you have to like expand your thought of imagination to find out what could be the possible threats to the structure that you are examining and how to protect it from these threats. So, ethical and technical considerations become like intermingled with each other when you are talking of professional discretion and judgment. So, we will discuss it again with a small case, like Hillary is an engineer working for the State Environmental Protection Division. Hillary's supervisor Pat tells Hillary to quickly draw up a building permit for a power plant and to avoid any delays. Hillary believes that the plans are inadequate to meet clean air regulations, but Pat thinks that these problems are fixable. Hillary considers whether to ask the State Engineering Registration Board about the consequences of issuing a permit that goes against environmental regulations. So, what state values, obligations and responsibilities are at stake in Hillary's deliberation about what to do? Should Hillary consult the State Registration Board? If so, how ought the information from the state board affect Hillary's decision what to do after that? What, if anything, Hillary can and should do if Hillary's department authorizes the building permit over Hillary's objections? Is there any other information you would like to have to help you answer these questions, and what is the difference it is going to make in your assessment? So, what we find over here, like if there is like an ethical, Hillary feels like it is a not going to be environment friendly and inadequate to meet clean air regulation. So, the suggestions of the State Environmental Regulation Board can always be sought for if they want to find the guidelines, like what requires to be done, and given the guidelines, Hillary may take her a decision about it. Now, if Hillary's organization takes a decision which is in spite of the objection, takes the decision, then it is a part of the professional responsibility, it's part of the trustworthiness, it is a responsibility towards the greater public at large, where these matters should be known to the beneficiaries at large, so that the if a voice could be raised from all the stakeholders, maybe this kind of projects may be stopped. So, when you talk of moral problems, it is treated as questions of whether to do something or not to do something, and whether it is fair to do. When you questions about how to do things, it raises ethical questions of fairness, what is the correct way of doing, how far should we go in protecting the safety. So, these are protecting the safety, well-being, thinking of environment, thinking of synergy, sustainability. These are the professional responsibility of engineers, and that makes them trustworthy also, because people believe they are going to use their expert knowledge and discretion take help of that knowledge to arrive at a particular conclusion which is focused towards the well-being of the stakeholders at large. That makes them trustworthy. It is not only they being ethical, but they are competent also enough. Hillary, by seeking the state board's judgment on it, has tried to look into the improve the knowledge base before trying to take a decision about clean environment issue, clearance and all. So that what are to make myself knowledgeable, once I am knowledgeable about what are the regulations given and whether it is violating on what aspects, so that if I believe something is wrong, I can have reasons to tell properly where things are going wrong and to what extent and why this needs to be stopped. So, that is where it makes not only a professional responsibility, but it talks of the trustworthiness also, which is the two important pillars which are expected of an engineer, because you are responsible for the well-being and safety of the people at large. We will be taking up more key questions with relevance to the professional ethics in the next module to come. Thank you.